They mocked the black woman for being too tall for a wife until the Comanche giant built a house with his own bloodied hands. The timber groaned against the sky as Towering Sky raised another beam into place. His shoulders strained against the weight. His palms bled from the rough wood. The townspeople gathered like vultures on the ridge, their whispers carried on the wind. "Look at that tall drink of water thinking she deserves a palace. No decent man would want a woman that size. Unnatural, the both of them." Seraphina Crow stood in the shadow of the rising frame, her dark hands pressed against her worn dress. 6 feet and 2 inches of shame-made flesh. The house climbed toward heaven despite their words. A gunshot cracked the morning air. Someone shouted about the sheriff coming with a posse. The mystery hung thick as smoke. How had 2 outcasts found each other in this broken land? What brought a giant to build dreams from nothing but determination and bleeding hands? The story began 3 weeks earlier, with humiliation served cold. Seraphina had stepped off the dusty stagecoach with hope tucked in her traveling bag. The mail-order bride arrangement promised a new life. A husband named Jeremiah Stakes waited at the depot. His eyes measured her from boots to bonnet. "I ordered a wife, not a circus freak." The words hit harder than fists. The town square erupted in laughter. Children pointed. Women whispered behind gloved hands. Men shook their heads like she was a broken tool. Her letters had lied about her height. Desperation made liars of decent people. The truth stood before them now in all its impossible tallness. Stakes turned his back and walked away. His boots kicked dust in her face. The stagecoach pulled away with her dreams tied to its back wheels. Night fell like a funeral shroud. Seraphina curled behind the general store on a bed of discarded grain sacks. Stars watched her cry. The frontier showed no mercy to the unwanted. Towering Sky lived in different exile. The Comanche band had cast him out for refusing violence. 7 feet of warrior flesh with a peacemaker's heart. The contradiction had cost him everything. Deputy Mason Colt spotted him trading at the edge of town. Fear and hatred danced in the lawman's eyes. Every Indian was a threat in his narrow world. The exile's gentle nature meant nothing to men who saw only skin and bloodline. "Your kind ain't welcome here," Colt spat. Towering Sky said nothing. Words were weapons he chose not to wield. Silence became his armor against a world that wanted him gone. The first meeting happened by accident. Seraphina had scraped together enough coins to rent a corner of the old seamstress shop. The previous owner had died of consumption. Death lingered in the dust and broken thread. Towering Sky appeared in her doorway like a mountain given human form. His torn shirt hung in tatters. He placed hand-carved buttons on her counter, his payment for invisible shirt with trembling hands, their fingers brushed. 2 outcasts recognizing the same wounds. Height meant nothing when the world had already marked you as wrong. He returned each day as the sun reached its peak. She mended his clothes with careful stitches. He paid in carved bone and polished stone. They spoke through gestures and shared glances. The town noticed. Gossip spread like prairie fire. Jeremiah Stakes still burned with embarrassment. His public rejection had become everyone's entertainment. Shame curdled into something darker. He needed someone to blame for his wounded pride. Deputy Colt fed on the town's fear. Every interaction between the seamstress and the exile proved his point about danger. Indians and troublesome women spelled doom for decent folk. The threats came like summer storms, quick and vicious. "That savage comes around again, you'll both be sorry," Colt warned. Seraphina's hands shook as she threaded her needle. Fear tasted like copper pennies, but when Towering Sky appeared the next day, she opened her door anyway. Something stronger than fear grew between them. Not love yet, but recognition. 2 souls deemed unfit by the same cruel world. Their quiet rebellion bloomed in shared silence. Windows broke in the night. Rocks sailed through darkness with hatred tied to their flight. Glass scattered across her floor like fallen stars. The message was clear. Towering sky found her sweeping, broken dreams at dawn. His jaw tightened, muscles coiled beneath his skin. Violence would be easy. Peace required strength beyond measure. He disappeared for 2 days. When he returned, determination burned in his dark eyes. He spread a faded paper on her counter, legal words in careful script, a land deed bearing official seals. The treaty everyone had forgotten still held power. 20 acres outside town belonged to him by law. The irony cut sharp as winter wind. The savage owned more land than most decent folk. His calloused finger traced the property lines. His eyes asked the question his voice would not speak. Serafina stared at the document. Trust was a luxury neither could afford, but something in his steady gaze made her nod. The decision sealed their fate, 2 outcasts choosing hope over safety. The house would rise despite every voice telling them to fall. The daily visits became ritual. Towering sky arrived when the sun peeked overhead. Serafina waited with needle and thread. Their silence held more weight than most people's words. He brought torn clothes and stories written in scars. She mended fabric and soles with equal care. The broken English he spoke emerged slowly, careful words chosen to avoid conflict. "Sky teaches horse words," he said one afternoon. She nodded. Her fingers traced letters and spilled flour. He watched her lips form Comanche sounds, 2 languages meeting in the space between heartbeats. The town watched too. Eyes tracked every interaction. Whispers followed them through the dust. Pearl Santos appeared on a Tuesday morning. Her face bore fresh bruises beneath the powder. The arranged marriage in Mexico had left deeper wounds than skin could show. "Please," she whispered, "I need work." Serafina's shop became refuge. Pearl's nimble fingers flew across embroidery. Her gratitude spoke in Spanish lullabies hummed while sewing. Jacob Wheelwright hobbled in the following week. The war had taken his leg below the knee. His crutch tapped against wooden floors. Pride and shame warred in his weathered face. "Heard you help folks who don't fit," he said. The circle grew. Old Pete arrived last. Gray hair crowned a face mapped by decades of pain. His searching eyes held questions about family lost to auction blocks and broken promises. They gathered in the evenings after decent folk shuttered their windows. 4 outcasts sharing bread and silence. Towering sky carved figures from driftwood. Serafina stitched repairs to their worn dignity. The threats escalated with their growing bond. Jeremiah Stakes held court in the saloon. His voice carried poison disguised as concern. The public rejection still festered in his pride. Shame demanded payment in other people's suffering. "Unnatural relations," he spat into his whiskey. Indian and that tall woman. Against God and nature both. Deputy Colt nodded agreement. Fear made him stupid, and stupidity made him dangerous. Every gathering of misfits proved his point about social decay. The town meeting convened on a Thursday night. Lantern light flickered against worried faces. Decent citizens demanded action against the Indian problem. Words grew sharp as winter wind. Serafina's shop windows shattered before dawn. Glass teeth scattered across her floor. The message cut deeper than broken panes. Conformity or consequences. She swept fragments with shaking hands. Each piece reflected her fractured hopes. The frontier showed no mercy to those who dared dream different. Towering sky found her kneeling among the ruins. His jaw muscles tightened. Violence whispered easy solutions. His hands could break more than windows. Instead, he knelt beside her. His massive fingers gathered glass with surprising gentleness. 2 people cleaning up the mess that hatred made. That afternoon, he spread the deed across her counter. Legal words in faded ink. 20 acres of possibility outside town limits. The forgotten treaty still held power in courts that mattered. His finger traced property boundaries. His eyes asked questions his voice could not form. Trust was currency neither could afford, but something in his steady gaze made her heart decide before her mind caught up. She placed her hand over his. Calloused palm met calloused palm. 2 lives choosing hope over safety. The land stretched empty under endless sky. Prairie grass bent before autumn wind. No trees for timber, no water for mixing mortar, just earth and determination and bleeding hands. Towering Sky walked the boundaries at sunrise. His bare feet read stories written in soil. Where to dig for water. Which direction faced winter storms. How to build dreams from nothing but will. He began gathering materials like a man possessed. Fallen logs from the creek bed, stones worn smooth by patient water, clay from the riverbank that would hold walls together, each piece carried to the site on his broad shoulders, each load a prayer made flesh. The house would rise because failure meant surrender, and surrender meant death for souls too proud to break. Serafina closed her shop early each day. She walked the dusty miles to watch walls take shape. Pearl brought food wrapped in clean cloth. Jacob whittled wooden pegs despite his disability. Old Pete mixed mortar with gnarled hands. A family built from rejection. Love measured in shared labor. The townspeople rode out to witness the spectacle. They sat their horses on the ridge. Their laughter carried on the wind. Fool Indian thinks he can build a palace. That tall woman's put ideas in his head. Winter will finish what sense couldn't start. But the walls climbed higher each day. Stone fitted to stone. Log balanced on log. Architecture born from desperation and dreams. Evening brought them together around small fires. Towering Sky's hands bled from rough timber. His back ached from impossible loads, but his eyes held light that hadn't flickered there before. Serafina watched him work and felt something shift inside her chest. Not pity anymore, not gratitude, something deeper that had no name in any language they shared. The first hard frost came early. Ice painted the prairie silver. Construction became a race against winter's teeth. The roof needed raising before snow made building impossible. Town merchants refused to sell supplies. Hardware stores turned away their money. Even basic nails became precious as gold. Towering Sky fashioned everything by hand. Wooden pegs where iron was denied. Leather hinges where metal was forbidden. Ingenuity born from necessity and nurtured by spite. The house took on impossible beauty. Each hand-carved detail spoke of love too strong for ordinary expression. Window frames bore geometric patterns. Door handles curved in flowing lines. Art and shelter merged in defiance of a world that demanded ugly conformity. Serafina stood in the half-finished structure as sunset painted the walls gold. This place built by bleeding hands. This home carved from nothing but determination and shared pain. Towering Sky appeared in the doorway. Sawdust crowned his dark hair. His eyes held questions that made her breath catch. She crossed the space between them. Her hand touched his chest. His heart drummed against her palm. Two people choosing each other despite every voice screaming they were wrong. The wind carried distant threats. Deputy Colt was gathering men. Jeremiah Stakes was spreading poison. Winter was coming fast. But inside the rising walls, surrounded by love, made manifest in wood and stone, they were already home. The house climbed toward heaven one timber at a time. Each day brought new walls. Each wall defied the voices saying stop. Towering Sky's hands moved with purpose carved from years of exile and sharpened by love. Serafina found strength in watching him work. Her spine straightened. Her shoulders squared. 6 feet and 2 inches of woman learning to stand proud instead of apologetic. Pearl stirred pots over the cooking fire. Steam carried the scent of beans and cornbread. Jacob sharpened tools despite his missing leg. His crutch propped against the workbench. Old Pete mixed clay and straw with patient hands. A family building more than walls. They were raising proof that broken people could create beautiful things. The roof beams stretched across the frame. Towering Sky balanced on timber high above the ground. His bare feet found purchase where angels feared to tread. Each step a prayer, each placement a promise. Winter arrived 3 weeks early. The sky turned the color of old pewter. Wind carried ice crystals that cut exposed skin. Construction became a race against nature's calendar. Town merchants shuttered their doors when the outcasts approached. Hardware stores refused to sell nails. Lumber yards claimed empty stock. Money meant nothing when hate ran the ledger books. Towering Sky carved wooden pegs from oak branches. His knife shaped dowels and joints, every connection made by hand, every board fitted with bleeding fingers. The sabotage began on a moonless Tuesday. Morning revealed scattered tools. The saw blade bore fresh nicks, rope frayed beyond repair. Someone had visited in the darkness with destruction on their mind. Towering Sky examined the damage without speaking. His jaw muscles worked beneath bronze skin. Violence would be easy. Peace required strength that few men possessed. He began again. New tools fashioned from scrap iron. Fresh rope woven from prairie grass. The house continued rising despite midnight visitors. The attacks escalated with each passing week. Timber stacks burned in the pre-dawn darkness. Flames licked toward the main structure. Towering Sky beat the fire with wet blankets. Smoke stung his eyes. Ash painted his face war-painted. Serafina arrived to find him sitting in the ruins of a night's work. His shoulders sagged beneath invisible weight. Even giants could be broken by persistent hatred. She knelt beside him in the ashes. Her hand found his shoulder. No words passed between them. Comfort lived in shared silence. Pearl discovered fresh damage the next morning. Foundation stones scattered like dice. Mortar scraped from joints. Hours of careful work undone by spiteful hands. Jacob's anger burned hotter than his companions could manage. The war had taught him that some problems required violent solutions. His hands curled into fists. "Let me stand watch," he said. Towering Sky shook his head. Violence would justify everything their enemies believed. The house must rise through peace or not at all. Old Pete volunteered for different duty. His slave years had taught him to move unseen. His old bones could still find shadows when needed. The next attack came on a Thursday night. Jeremiah's stakes crept toward the construction site. A sledgehammer hung from his belt. Destruction gleamed in his whiskey-glazed eyes. Old Pete watched from the tree line. His weathered hands gripped a thick branch, not for violence but for noise. The club struck the oak trunk with thunder. Stakes fled into the darkness. His cowardice revealed for what it was. Brave enough to destroy sleeping dreams. Too weak to face wakeful defenders. Morning brought revelation. Pete's vigil had documented weeks of sabotage, footprints in the mud, torn cloth on barbed wire, evidence pointing toward respectable men with unrespectable hearts. But revelation brought fresh doubts, too. Serafina stood in the half-built house as snow began falling. Winter would claim the unfinished walls. Spring would find frozen timber and cracked foundations. Her presence had brought this war to his doorstep. "Maybe I should leave," she whispered. The words hung in the cold air. Ice crystals formed around her breath. Fear spoke louder than love in moments of despair. Towering Sky heard the surrender in her voice. His heart cracked along fault lines older than the prairie. She was ashamed of what they were building, ashamed of him. He turned away without speaking. His footsteps crunched through snow toward the timber pile. Work was the only prayer he had left. Serafina watched him go. The distance between them stretched further than the space their feet could measure. Love was a luxury that outcasts couldn't afford. But Pearl understood what fear could do to hearts. Her bruised face had taught lessons about running from shadows. She followed Serafina into the winter air. "He thinks you're ashamed," Pearl said. The truth struck harder than hammers. Serafina had been thinking of his safety. He heard only rejection. Two hearts speaking different languages of pain. Snow fell heavier as evening approached. The house frame stood outlined against gray sky. Half-finished dreams wearing winter's shroud. Beauty interrupted by seasons and spite. Old Pete tended the fire while the others worked. His keen eyes watched the ridge line. Deputy Colt had been gathering men. Jeremiah Stakes had been spreading poison. The final confrontation approached with the storm. Towering Sky raised the last beam before darkness claimed the day. His hands moved with desperate precision. The roof would be finished, or the house would die incomplete. No middle ground remained. Serafina climbed the ladder to help guide the timber. Her height reached where others could not. Two outcasts working together, despite words that wounded. The beams settled into place, 4 walls and a roof, shelter carved from nothing but determination and bleeding hands. The house stood complete in structure, if not in details. Thunder rolled across the prairie, not from storm clouds, but from horse hooves. Riders approached through the snow. Torches flickered against the white landscape. Deputy Colt led a dozen men toward the construction site. Their faces held the righteousness of the narrow-minded. Justice rode with hatred in the saddle. Towering Sky climbed down from the roof. His feet found solid ground. The house rose behind him, proof that outcasts could build beautiful things despite every voice telling them to fail. Serafina stood beside him. Her hand found his, 2 people choosing each other as the world chose violence. The storm was coming, but they would meet it together. The riders surrounded the house. Torches cast dancing shadows on the walls. Voices demanded surrender. Hearts demanded resistance. The final test had arrived with the snow. The posse circled the house on horses breathing steam. Torches flickered against the snow. Deputy Colt sat his saddle with righteous fury burning in his eyes. A dozen men flanked him. Fear and hatred rode together through the winter night. Towering Sky stepped forward. 7 feet of calm defiance. His hands hung loose at his sides. No weapons except the truth written in legal ink. "You're under arrest for theft," Colt announced. "Stolen timber. Trespassing on decent land." The accusations hung in the frozen air. Lies dressed up as law. Justice perverted by men who confused hatred with duty. Serafina moved to stand beside her giant, her spine straight as lodgepole pine. 6 feet and 2 inches of woman done with apologizing for her existence. The house rose behind them, proof that outcasts could build beautiful things. Old Pete emerged from the shadows. His weathered hands held the land deed, yellow paper crackling in the cold, legal words that carried more weight than angry voices. "This land belongs to him," Pete said. "Treaty signed and witnessed. Government seal still holds power." Colt's face twisted. His certainty crumbled against documented truth. The savage owned more land than most decent folk. Irony cut deeper than winter wind. Jeremiah Stakes pushed his horse forward. Whiskey courage made him stupid. His sledgehammer hung from his saddle, the tool of midnight destruction. "Don't matter what papers say. No place for their kind here." Old Pete smiled without warmth. His slave years had taught him to gather evidence. Patient watching paid dividends when justice needed proof. "Seen you creeping around at night," Pete said. "Got witnesses to your mischief? Law works both ways when you got documentation." Stakes paled beneath his whiskey flush. Sabotage carried its own penalties. Destruction of property meant jail time for white men, too. The confrontation balanced on a knife's edge. Truth faced down lies. Law wrestled with prejudice. Snow fell heavier as if the sky wanted to bury the whole mess. Sheriff Williams rode up through the storm. His badge caught torchlight. Authority arrived with gray hair and tired eyes. Too old for midnight drama. Too wise for Deputy Colt's righteousness. "What's all this about?" Williams asked. Colt stammered accusations. Stakes mumbled justifications. The posse shifted nervously in their saddles. Mob courage faded when real law arrived. The sheriff examined the deed by torchlight. His finger traced official seals. Legal training recognized legitimate documents. The treaty held water in any court that mattered. "This is his land," Williams said. "Built on his own property with his own hands. No crime in that." The words carried finality. Justice spoke through an old man tired of hatred disguised as law. The posse began dispersing. Righteous fury melted under legal reality. But truth did more than clear accusations. It transformed hearts willing to see clearly. Williams studied the house rising against the sky. Hand-carved details spoke of artistry beyond mere shelter, beauty born from bleeding hands and determined love. "You build like this," the sheriff said to Towering Sky. "I got need for a new schoolhouse. Town's been talking about it for years." The offer stunned everyone into silence. Respect, replacing fear, professional recognition instead of exile. The giant who built with gentle hands had found his calling. Serafina felt tears freeze on her cheeks, not from cold, but from hope too long denied. The world was changing, hearts were opening. Love had built more than walls. 1 year later, Haven's Rest stretched across the prairie. The original house had grown into a small settlement. Outcasts and misfits found welcome where none existed before. The schoolhouse stood completed in town. Children learned beneath hand-carved beams. Towering skies' craftsmanship sheltered the next generation. Beauty and function merged in wood and stone. Serafina taught sewing to women who had forgotten how to dream. Pearl's embroidery decorated the finest dresses. Jacob trained apprentices despite his missing leg. Old Pete finally found the family he'd been seeking. The wedding ceremony happened by the river. No preacher would marry them officially. But love needed no documentation beyond two hearts choosing each other. Water blessed their union with ancient authority. Serafina wore a dress of her own making, white cotton that flowed around her like morning mist. She stood tall beside her giant. No shame in their combined height. Beauty came in all proportions. Towering sky spoke his vows in broken English and perfect Comanche. Two languages joining two hearts. The river carried their promises toward distant seas. Their community gathered to witness love triumphant. Broken people who had built something whole. Hearts that had learned to see beauty instead of difference. Children played around the hand-built house, all colors and backgrounds mixing freely. The next generation growing up colorblind to hatred. Hope took root in young hearts. A new stagecoach arrived in town. Another mail-order bride stepped down with trepidation written in her eyes. Too short instead of too tall. Rejected for different reasons, but rejected nonetheless. The townspeople watched her humiliation with uncomfortable silence. Cruelty had lost its entertainment value. Conscience made cowards of former mockers. Someone quietly directed her toward Haven's Rest, the settlement beyond the ridge where outcasts built dreams from determination and love, where height mattered less than heart. Serafina watched from her porch as the woman approached. Recognition passed between wounded souls. The cycle of healing continued. Haven's Rest welcomed another refugee from narrow minds. The sun set behind hand-carved eaves. Golden light painted the walls that love had built. Towering sky's massive hand found Serafina's slender fingers. Perfect fit, despite impossible proportions. They had mocked the black woman for being too tall for a wife. They had feared the Comanche giant for being too different for acceptance. But love built bridges across any divide. Hearts recognized hearts regardless of packaging. The house stood testament to truth written in timber and stone. Beauty came from bleeding hands and determined spirits. Home existed wherever love decided to build its foundation. Snow began falling again, winter returning to test their resolve. But the walls would hold. The fire would burn warm. Love had built strong enough to weather any storm. And that is all to the story, for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you, it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.